You ever sit in a courtroom where everyone thinks they know who you are? And you're the only one who can't speak? I'm Gavin, 33, and until a few weeks ago, I thought I knew how family worked. After my mom died from stage 4 colon cancer 2 years ago, I moved back into the house I grew up in to take care of my grandma. Her name's Alma. She's 87, sharp as hell most days, but her legs aren't what they used to be, and she had a minor stroke last fall. I quit my job in Chicago, graphic design, nothing fancy. Sold my car and came back to rural Indiana, thinking it'd just be until we figured things out. There was no we. It was just me and Grandma. We'd sit out on the porch at dusk, drink herbal tea, and go through photo albums. She loved her lavender oil diffuser and old jazz records. I learned how to change her catheter, track her meds, clean her sheets. Every month I had to explain to the pharmacy that yes, she still needed her blood thinners, and no, I wasn't misusing her Medicare. She called me her little soldier. Then my Aunt Diane showed up. After 15 years of total silence. I hadn't seen her since I was 18. She skipped Mom's funeral, didn't call once during her illness. I'd heard rumors she was off in Florida with some guy who owned a car dealership. She never responded to my texts, never even sent a Christmas card. So you can imagine my face when she walked through Grandma's door wearing heels, sunglasses, and this weird, overly sweet voice. "Mama, I'm here now. You don't need to worry anymore." I was polite. I even hugged her. I thought, maybe she feels guilty. Maybe she wants to help. Nope. Within a week, she was already complaining to Grandma about how stressful my presence was. Said I hovered too much. That I made Alma anxious. Started suggesting that maybe Grandma would do better if I gave her more space. Started planting little ideas like, he's not really trained for this, is he? She even told our cousin Trevor that I yelled at Grandma and kept her from using the phone. Which is wild, because I had literally installed the medical alert system that dialed 3 contacts, including Diane herself. But she knew what she was doing. She wasn't just stirring the pot. She was building a story. 2 weeks ago, she filed a petition for full guardianship of Alma, said I was emotionally unstable, inappropriately isolating her mother, and jeopardizing the elder's welfare. She said I was controlling Grandma's medication to make her dependent on me. I found out about the court date 2 days before it happened. And here's where it gets unreal. She brought in 2 witnesses, people I barely know, neighbors who suddenly remembered hearing raised voices from our kitchen window. She even had screenshots of texts I sent to a friend months ago where I vented, "I feel like I'm drowning." Diane's lawyer read that out loud like it was a confession of abuse. I sat there, silent, my palms slick against the oak courtroom bench. My shirt clung to my back with sweat. When the judge asked Diane to explain her concerns, she gave this syrupy, poised response about stepping up when it mattered most and fearing for her mother's mental health under my care. I tried to speak. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I looked behind me to find Alma. She wasn't even there. Diane claimed she was too stressed to attend. I didn't even get a chance to talk to her beforehand. That part was intentional, I think. And just when the judge began reviewing her notes, Diane stood up again and said, loud and clear, "Your Honor, I believe my nephew is a danger to my mother's safety. I respectfully request full guardianship effective immediately." That's when someone in the back of the courtroom, an older woman I didn't recognize at first, raised her hand and said, "I think the court should see what Alma gave me last week." Everyone turned. Even Diane's smirk slipped for a second, and that's when she reached into her handbag and pulled out a small black USB drive. At first, the judge didn't even acknowledge the woman. You could tell she was trying to stay on script. But then the lady spoke again, calm but firm. "Alma asked me to hold on to this." She said, "If Gavin can't speak for me, maybe this can." That sentence, it hit me like a brick. I hadn't seen this woman before, at least not recently. But the more I looked, the more I realized it was Mrs. Elsie, my grandma's bridge partner from the old recreation center. She used to come by on Thursdays before COVID shut everything down. The judge finally nodded and motioned for the bailiff to take the USB. He plugged it into the court laptop at the bench. The screen flickered. Then a grainy video popped up. It was Grandma. She was sitting in her armchair, the blue quilt folded over her knees, her hair pulled back. She looked tired, but alert. Her voice was soft. "If you're watching this, it means Diane has done what I feared." The courtroom went so still you could hear someone's pen click 2 rows away. "Gavin has taken care of me since his mother. My daughter passed. He is not perfect, but he has never harmed me. He makes me feel safe. I'm saying this because I've started to forget things, and Diane has come back saying she'll help, but she yells when no one is around. She says I need to sign over the house, that Gavin is stealing from me. He isn't." My chest tightened. I wasn't ready to see her like that. I wasn't ready to hear the fear in her voice. The video continued. "She says if I don't do what she says, she'll move me to the facility off Route 12. I know what happens there. I saw what they did to Louise Mathers." She paused, looked into the camera. "If I can't be in court, this is me speaking. Gavin is my caregiver, my choice. Please protect him." The video ended. Silence. No one moved, not even Diane. The judge leaned back slowly, her face unreadable. She looked at Diane, then at me, then back at Diane. And that's when Diane snapped. She stood up so fast, her chair screeched. That video is old. She doesn't even know what she's saying anymore. Gavin probably coached her. She's been confused for weeks. But the judge raised her hand. "Sit. Down." And for the first time since this nightmare started, I saw it. Real doubt in Diane's eyes. Her mask cracked. Just a little. The judge then looked at me. "Mr. Carson, have you ever submitted a power of attorney form on Alma's behalf?" I shook my head. "No, Your Honor." She nodded, wrote something down. "We'll need to pause this hearing. I'm issuing an emergency hold on all transfer of guardianship. A court-appointed evaluator will assess Ms. Alma's well-being within 48 hours. Until then, no changes will be made to her care arrangements." That should have felt like a win, but I didn't feel anything. Just numb. I left the courtroom shaking. I didn't wait for Diane. I didn't talk to the reporters outside. I just got in my car and drove to the Walgreens where Grandma liked to get her photo prints. I sat in the parking lot until my hands stopped trembling. The next morning, I went home early, before Diane could show up again. When I opened the door, something felt off. The lights were still on in the kitchen. The mail was scattered all over the floor. And then I saw the drawer. The one where Grandma kept her important papers. Birth certificate, insurance, the deed to the house. It had been emptied, gone. Every folder, every form, every copy of her will, vanished. I ran into her room. She was there, sitting on the bed in her robe. Her hands were shaking. She looked at me, eyes glassy. She said if I didn't give it to her, she'd make sure you never saw me again. My stomach dropped. "Did you sign anything?" I asked. She nodded, barely, then pulled something from her robe pocket, a sticky note. In shaky handwriting, it said, "She made me sign the house over." I'm sorry. I was scared. And right then, I realized the fight wasn't about care. It was never about love. It was about control. And Diane had just moved to Endgame. I wish I could say I did something heroic right then. Ran to a lawyer, confronted Diane, saved the day. But the truth? I just sat down on the edge of Grandma's bed and cried. Not a little. Not the kind of tears you wipe away before someone sees. I wept like a kid. Because no matter how old you are, it breaks something in you when someone you love looks you in the eyes and says they were too scared to protect you. After a while, Grandma rested her hand on mine. Her fingers were like tissue paper. "I didn't know what else to do," she whispered. And the worst part is, I understood. Diane's always known how to scare people into silence. That same afternoon, I started digging. I went through the trash, the mail, the browser history on Grandma's iPad. Nothing. Diane had wiped everything clean. But by evening, I found something she missed. Tucked inside Grandma's crossword book was a half-filled form. Revocation of power of attorney. The date was blank. The signature line, too. It wasn't much, but it told me Grandma had tried to claw back control before it was too late. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled up my laptop, poured a whiskey, and started typing everything out. Dates, names, witnesses, everything Diane had done since showing back up. The threats, the manipulation, the missing paperwork. I sent the file to 3 people I trust, just in case. 2 days later, the court evaluator came. Her name was Margot, early 40s, kind eyes but sharp as a scalpel. She asked me to leave the room while she talked to Grandma. I paced the hallway like a madman. 40 minutes later, Margot stepped out and said, "She's scared, but she's clear, and she trusts you." For the first time in weeks, I exhaled. That relief lasted less than 24 hours. The next morning, while I was at the pharmacy picking up Grandma's meds, my neighbor texted, "Hey, weird question. Was that moving truck supposed to be at your place?" I froze. Called her. She said 2 guys in uniforms were loading furniture into the back of a truck with Diane giving orders from the porch. I sped home, ran 3 red lights. When I pulled into the driveway, half the living room was gone. Grandma's armchair, our bookshelves, the old piano she used to play on Sundays. Gone. Diane stood there in her stupid beige blazer like she was directing a home makeover show. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. "It's my house now, Gavin," she said. "You don't get to stop me anymore." I told her to get off the property. She smiled and handed me an envelope. It was a formal eviction notice, effective in 7 days, signed by her, acting as power of attorney. I was shaking. I turned to the movers. "You guys okay helping someone steal from an old woman with dementia?" They looked uncomfortable. One of them put down the lamp he was holding. Diane didn't blink. "You're spiraling, Gavin," she said. "It's sad, really. You could have had a life." And that was it. She drove off with half our home in the back of a truck. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with Grandma, staring at the empty walls. She said, "It's like she took the past." I said, "Not all of it." Then I remembered something. Something I hadn't thought about in years. A lockbox. It used to be in the attic, buried under old quilts. My mom's box. She called it the fireproof vault and said, "If anything ever happens, this stays with us." I climbed up at 1 a.m. with a flashlight. It was still there. Inside were birth certificates, a copy of the original will, photos, and a cassette tape. A tape. From 2006, labeled Alma plus Mary, Full Estate Plan Discussion. I don't even own a tape player anymore. But I swear my hands were shaking when I held it. Because suddenly, it wasn't just about paperwork. It was about proof. That Grandma never wanted Diane to have a single inch of this house. That she knew who would show up too late, just in time to take everything. And maybe that tape would be the one thing Diane didn't see coming. I know this isn't your usual uplifting story, but if you've ever been the one who stayed, while others came back just to collect, then maybe you know this ache. The ache of being dismissed, overlooked, and called unstable for simply being there. I'm not writing this for pity. I'm writing it so someone out there knows you're not crazy. You're just the only one who kept the receipts. After I found the tape, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, wrapped in one of Grandma's old quilts, holding that cassette like it was radioactive. My brain ran 1,000 miles an hour. What if it was blank? What if it was just her and my mom talking about recipes? But deep down, I knew. My mom wasn't the sentimental type. If she labeled something estate plan, she meant business. The next morning, I drove across town to the last place I thought I'd go. A pawn shop 2 blocks from the bus depot. The kind of place with dusty guitars, ancient DVDs, and a dude behind the counter who looked like he hadn't blinked since '97. I walked in holding the tape and said, "You got something that plays this?" He grunted, pointed to a back shelf. $10 and 2 AA batteries. Later, I was sitting in my car with an old handheld recorder, heart pounding. I pressed play. First it was static, then a voice, my mom's. Calm, steady, lawyer mode. "Okay, this is May 16th, 2006. We're going over the updated estate plan for Alma in case of health decline. Witness present is Sarah Martinez, legal notary. Per Alma's request, Diane Blake is not to be granted power of attorney under any circumstance." I froze. Then I hit rewind and played that part again. Not to be granted power of attorney under any circumstance. My chest tightened so hard I forgot to breathe. Grandma's voice came next, a little more fragile, but clear. "She only shows up when she smells money. Mary, I want it in writing. Gavin is the one I trust. He shows up." And just like that, I had it. Proof. Diane's entire grip on Grandma, on the house, on me, was based on a fake power of attorney. A lie so smooth it slid right past the judge, the movers, the neighbors. But now I had something better than signatures. I had her own mother saying, on record, that Diane was never supposed to be in control. I spent the next 48 hours gathering everything. Photos of the empty drawer, witness statements from the neighbor who saw the moving truck, even a voice memo I'd secretly recorded of Diane threatening to handle things legally if I didn't back off. I printed it all, highlighted every timestamp, labeled every folder. Then I did something that felt equal parts desperate and badass. I booked a walk-in appointment with a journalist. Her name was Kendra, mid-30s, no nonsense, and skeptical as hell. But she listened. And when I played the tape, her eyebrows shot up. She leaned in. "Do you have written consent to publish this?" I held up a signed form from Grandma, dated last year, authorizing documentation in case of elder abuse. Kendra nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "Let's talk." That night, the story went live. Son accused of elder neglect exposes fake power of attorney scheme. Local news picked it up. Then the nursing rights groups. The story exploded faster than I could process. By morning, Diane's lawyer had filed a motion to withdraw representation. She called me once. Blocked number. I didn't answer. The court reconvened 3 days later, and that's when the twist hit. Diane didn't show. Instead, a man stood up in the back of the courtroom dressed in a sharp suit. He handed the judge a folder and said, "Your Honor, I represent the Braddock Group. We recently discovered Ms. Blake used a falsified document to transfer ownership of a property she didn't lawfully possess. We are here to request a formal investigation into potential real estate fraud." I blinked. Braddock Group, real estate investment firm. I'd seen their signs all over town. I realized what happened. Diane had tried to flip the house. Quick sale. Cash buyer. Probably had a deal in motion before I even knew we were going to court. But she got sloppy. She sold something she didn't legally own. And the buyers? They weren't suckers. They were sharks. And now? They were turning on her. The courtroom buzzed. The judge looked over the documents, eyes narrowing. Then she said 7 words I will never forget. "Ms. Blake's actions may constitute criminal fraud." I sat there frozen. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. Diane hadn't just tried to erase me from Grandma's life. She'd left a paper trail so wide it looped back to bite her where it hurt most. The judge paused, then said, "Mr. Carson, full guardianship is restored effective immediately. We will notify you of any criminal proceedings moving forward." And just like that, it was over. I'm still trying to process what it means to win a fight you never wanted to be in. To spend months screaming into a void, only for the truth to come roaring out all at once. But if you've ever had someone twist your silence into guilt, I want you to know. Sometimes the loudest justice doesn't come from shouting. Sometimes it comes from keeping everything. The receipts, the memories, the tape. Diane didn't go quietly. She never does. After the court restored guardianship to me and opened the fraud investigation, she called every relative we had left, claimed I'd manipulated Grandma, twisted the courts, staged the tape. She even told someone that I must have paid Braddock Group to fake their lawsuit. Like I had deep-pocket real estate connections hidden behind my unpaid electric bill. But it didn't matter anymore. Because for the first time in this entire hellstorm, I didn't have to defend myself. The truth was doing it for me. 2 weeks later, she was served with a court summons for attempted property fraud and elder coercion. The Braddock Group wasn't playing around. Apparently, she'd already received a cash advance from a buyer. And the signed documents she submitted? They didn't even match the originals filed with the county. She's currently being investigated for multiple fraudulent filings across 3 counties. I didn't attend her first court date. I didn't need to. That morning, I took Grandma to the botanical garden she hadn't seen since her stroke. She wore a sun hat and let me push her wheelchair through the rows of lavender and zinnias. We sat near the koi pond, watching dragonflies skim the water, and for the first time in a long time, she looked like she could exhale. She reached over, touched my wrist, and said, "You stayed." I nodded. Sometimes that's all it takes. Later that week, I filed paperwork to ensure the house can't be touched again without judicial review. I digitized everything: Mom's tape, the will, the guardianship order. I made copies for Grandma's doctor, our lawyer, and myself. That attic box? It's in a fireproof safe now. As for Diane, I haven't heard from her since. But the last I knew, she lost her job at a luxury leasing agency after her name popped up in a local news brief. Apparently, alleged elder fraud doesn't look great on a business card. The house still creaks, the plumbing is ancient, but it's ours. The porch light works. Grandma's tea kettle still whistles like it's yelling at someone. I got a used keyboard off Craigslist so she can play again, even if her left hand shakes. Some nights I sit in the living room with a cup of coffee, replaying that moment in court when the tape ended. That silence, that shift, that snap when the lie finally cracked. And I think, for so long, I thought the hard part was fighting for the truth. But really? The hardest part was believing I deserved to speak it. I learned 2 things from all of this. People who disappear during your struggle will always come back for your reward. Silence can protect you, until it starts suffocating you. If any part of this story feels familiar to you, I hope you'll share your experience in the comments. You never know who needs to hear they're not alone. And if these stories matter to you, maybe stick around. This place is small, but it's honest. Stay safe, stay sharp, and never ever give away your voice.